Okay, here you are. Okay, so we can begin. Maybe we can start watching the pictures, or
Sure.
You can,
Yeah.
okay,
First,
any statement you want?
I'll just give a brief introduction.
Yeah, sure.
about myself
So sorry.
And a brief introduction about the project, and then we'll go through some pictures of the project. So I'm a street photographer, and all the photos that you'll see today are shot on this camera. I started photography in the early 2000s, and in 2010, I started life outside of the United States, basically on a permanent tourist visa. So I've been a nomad for about 12 years now, and have been lucky enough to call places like Japan home and learn Japanese and jump around in other places. And during that time, I've been really fortunate to learn from amazing photographers that have been mentors and teachers of mine that have helped me with my photos. And the main thing about my style of photography is I'm a street photographer, and there's a lot of different approaches with street photography. I tend to be in places that I don't speak the language, and obviously I'm tall and I stand out. So even if this is a discrete camera, people notice me like that, especially in places like Cairo. So we'll get into that. So I don't really talk to people before I get in and get these photos that I get, and all the photos are completely candid. And so, yeah.
How do you decided to start a project in Cairo?
Yeah, so I first went to Cairo in 2018, as a lot of people do, just as a tourist looking to see the pyramids and the main museum, looking to go to Luxor and that. And when you go to, at that point in my life, I had been to like 40-something countries, maybe 50 countries. And I'd been to some big cities like Tokyo, Delhi, Mumbai, doing photography. But I wasn't really prepared for Cairo. It caught me off guard. And I left Cairo after being a tourist with sort of the taste of Cairo that a lot of tourists get, where like, you know, this is a city where it's abrasive. They're going to, you know, you get scammed at the pyramids. And it wasn't the best trip. I didn't do too much photography, but the city definitely sparked my curiosity. So fast forward a few years to 2020, I had plans to be at the Olympics in Tokyo. My family was going to come out. I was in Kyoto at that time for 6 months, for the first 6 months of COVID. And I was doing a project in Gion in Kyoto, which is the geisha district in Kyoto. And so COVID happened, and I had to leave eventually. And one of the few places that was open was Egypt. And it seemed like a great opportunity to go back and see if that little curiosity that I had was worth exploring. And it turned out into this project, just kind of an accident. I went there initially for a month, and it went fantastic. And I was there both by myself and with other photographers. And what I noticed is I was in a very unique situation where I was going to a city that everybody knows, but is very, very, or not photographed very widely. Like, people photograph the pyramids to death, people photograph around the main sites, but they don't actually photograph the city. They don't even brave to explore these neighborhoods and areas.
Is it dangerous to go in the city, to inside the city?
So, like I said, my first experience was rough because I was around the pyramids, and I was around these places where if you're going to get scammed or hassled, you're going to have the problems there, right? Yeah. But when you go to these places, and a lot of times the people in the neighboring neighborhood will warn you, oh, don't go to that neighborhood. And then once you go to that neighborhood, they'll warn you about the other neighborhood. And everybody was extremely warm and welcoming for the most part. Although in Egypt, the reaction to seeing a person taking photos, especially in these neighborhoods that we'll see in these photos, is very polarized. So it's my second word in Arabic that I learned is la, which is no. So it's either a hard la or it's a surah, which is, take my photo in right. Arabic. So, and the funny thing is sometimes these very hard laws would turn into a surah, once they saw that you were not, no threat or anything. But So never had any problems with the actual people in the neighborhoods or anything like that. So.
And what about the title of the project? Why?
Right. So on the first trip, I was in one of these neighborhoods that I was completely fascinated with, and a local was very confused when they saw me taking photos. And I was, when I'm in these places, I can't help myself when I see something that I find really fascinating and really just it sparks my curiosity, and I everything disappears except for the photo that I'm trying to make. And he's like, "What are you doing here?" You know, in broken English, and I was just so fascinated. I was pointing at it, like, "Look at this, you know, it's amazing. This is great." And I was like, "It's beautiful." And he looks at it, and he just very confused, looks back at me, and he's like, "Beautiful. It's an old mess." And he just walks on. And I would get that sort of reaction in a matter of words a few different times. I would get people that would say, "Oh, this road is closed." That would happen quite often. You know, it's just a neighborhood road, and they would say it's closed when it's clearly not closed. But there may be something that they're a little bit embarrassed about, you know, and I'm not looking to show those things. You'll see I'm looking to show scenes. I like capturing complex scenes. I like capturing raw emotions, whether or not it's joy, happiness, some sorrow. I'm looking to capture scenes that I feel I can capture with respect and show them with dignity. But so I would run into that resistance, like, you can't come in, you know, the road is closed, and that was just part of it. And so after hitting this resistance a while, I was doing some research on Cairo, and I found that there's actually an ancient Egyptian proverb that kind of described what I was trying to portray with the project, and that is, "A beautiful thing is never perfect." A city like Cairo that was voted the most beautiful city in the world in 1925, beat out Paris and the other cities that were also, you know, big time back in 25. Most beautiful city in the world. It's had an extremely turbulent last century, and unfortunately, a lot of people just associate the revolution and the Arab Spring in 2011 and that sort of thing, and they go there with a lot of fear, and they may have, it may be justified, but it's overblown from my experience.
Yeah.
So that's where the title of the project came from.
Yeah. Okay. Like, so maybe we can get into what.
Yeah. We'll get into it here.
Yeah. Okay. Is this to go forward? This is backward.
Okay. So, and when I submitted these photos, these are this whole project was done during COVID. Okay. Oops.
Yes. This one. Yes.
Oh, this one. Oh yeah. We got the mouse right here.
Okay. Sorry. Okay.
Right. So all of these are during COVID, and in the 20 or so that I'll show here, this is kind of done during the first half of the project. I did quite a bit of the project actually after I submitted this work too. But so this is during the height of COVID, when nobody was traveling anywhere for the most part. It was very difficult. And the pyramids, which I'd been to plenty of times before, even prior to COVID, are usually full of tourists. And this was a day where, as I was walking up, I see about 30 uniformed, pristine white uniforms off in the distance where the Sphinx is. And I just started running to the Sphinx because, you know, people go to the Sphinx, they spend about 10 minutes tops taking their selfies, and then they work around the pyramids. And I knew this area really well. And I was completely caught off guard, and I knew this was a huge opportunity. And it was such a difficult shot because there's about 30 or something sailors moving around. And at first the opportunity is it's overwhelming to me. And I'm not thinking about what I'd learned as a photographer while I've been practicing street photography. But the main thing about this shot is I feel it's successful because I really highlight what the uniform is and what the meaning of the uniform is, when you put on a uniform, you remove yourself and you become a part of whatever it is. So normally I like to show faces, but here I am positioning myself to block the face and to frame the symbol. And you'll see in my work, I really like symbols. So the fact that the symbol is framed with his arms and with the shadow below. And so yeah, that was these guys are from France. They're a bagpipe group from the Navy in France. And this was their only outing during COVID. And what really made this shot possible is there's no other tourists around. Normally there would be tourists everywhere. And this is a more realistic view of the pyramids, which a lot of people don't even realize that there's neighborhoods really close in Giza. So Giza is everything left of the Nile, or west of the Nile, I guess. and this is a great neighborhood. This is one of my favorite neighborhoods to photograph in when I'm around Giza. Unfortunately, this neighborhood is becoming much harder to photograph in because they are displacing a lot of these families, and the government and the police are always suspicious of people walking around, even this close to the pyramids, with a camera, taking non-standard shots. So you take a shot like this, and it's not very uncommon where you're going to get talked to for a while, and you're going to get your photos looked through. But yeah, there's neighborhoods right up to the pyramids, and there's daily life going on. Unfortunately, they are putting up a new museum, huge museum near the pyramids, and because of that, and because of some other political reasons, a lot of these people are leaving or are losing their houses and being displaced.
Did you have any problem with authorities or police during your work?
Yeah. So Egypt is interesting because it is legal to photograph there. It's legal to take the type of photographs that I take there. But like anywhere, it doesn't necessarily boil down to the laws that are on the books. It's a very sort of tribal sort of thing, right? Like, so that was and has been one of the most stressful parts of doing this project. And that stress grew the longer that I did the project. At first I was fascinated and I was trying to portray Cairo in this sort of beautiful light because I wasn't getting these hassles, and the more hassles that I got and the more stress that it would be that I got on subsequent visits, my pictures started becoming a little bit darker. And I was also I was exploring more areas and for longer and things like that, and later in the night but yeah, so I never really had any problems. It's just stressful because it's not fun to be stopped by, they're always undercover police. They're never wearing uniforms, and they'll take you and they'll look through all your photographs, and it can be a few hours. It's no fun. But at the end of it, it's always like, oh, free to go. Did I do anything wrong? Nope. Have fun. So, and here's a picture that, I like complex scenes. This is in a guy's shop, a metal worker, and just trying to capture some life inside the shop as well as life outside of the shop. And one of the amazing things about Cairo being a city that has just so much history is the never-ending labyrinth of streets like this that are fantastic to explore with a wide angle. This is a 28 millimeter lens. It's very dark even in the daytime, so these shots are usually at 1600 or 3200 ISO, and I try to shoot at 250 or 500, but I mean, if this is maybe at 125 and maybe at f8 or something, but yeah, it's dark. This is midday. Here's another scene, and when I look at these scenes now, and whenever I go back to Cairo, it always amazes me that I'm able to get photos like this, because as soon as I'm on the street, everybody's looking at me and saying "Sura, Sura," and it's always amazing to see shots like this where I'm so close and nobody's noticing, and it's because I work past the point where they notice me, and I don't worry about being invisible. I just try to be ignorable, and I try not to be, seem like a threat or anything. But with this photo, one of the things, like I said, I look for is symbols, and so I stick around because the flag is a very symbolic element. It gives a sense of place. And here's another photo that this was very early on, and this is like one of the scenes where I would see it, and how can you not think this is amazingly beautiful, and somebody would think otherwise if they lived there, and I realized that myself, living in Japan for as long as I had. When I first went to Japan, everything was amazing, and after 10 or something years, you just get used to it. And so this is in a neighborhood. Unfortunately, this is interesting because it's a dead end and it's very, very narrow street. This is a gas vendor. He goes around and he bangs on the gas with a wrench to let everybody know that if they need gas, they can come out, I guess, and get it. And it was just a beautiful moment where this grandma and I'm assuming her grandson are out at the window. And I actually printed this up, and the last time I was out there, I spent a few days trying to hunt this location down so I could give it to them. And I got there, and I had Google Translate with Arabic set up and talked to the neighbors, and unfortunately they don't live there. They're actually tearing this whole thing down.
Really? Okay.
But
are they touring a lot of a building in Cairo, or is there the city is very active from this point of view? Or
and right now, especially during the last year, if anybody's been in Cairo, they're really doing a lot of restorative work in like around Tahrir Square, all the downtown area. Last time I was there was complete scaffolding up and down for blocks and blocks and blocks. And Cairo is just one of these odd cities where there's so many unofficial buildings. Yeah. There will be what in the West we think of as like skyscrapers, but they're just very crudely built brick buildings, one right after another, and it's just a maze of streets inside of there. And a lot of these buildings are very, very old themselves, and so yeah, some of them are being torn down, no longer maintained. So this is another sort of complex scene that I like to try to get, and again, very close. I could probably reach out and touch this guy on the right, but I happen to time my entrance with the man who is delivering this guy tea. He's waiting for his tea, and I knew I only had one or two shots, and just really crouched down and got it, trying to frame the guy on the left and keep the eyeball in the shot as the symbol. And just showing what's funny is, and what's great about Cairo is just walking down the street, everybody's really friendly and curious for the most part, and you get invited into people's shops just to I'm behind the counter, I'm by the cash register, and so just
he seems happy too.
Yeah, he was great, and it's just a cool way to get a different perspective of the daily life in the street, and seeing how they sell the diapers, and by keeping them in the bag and just selling them individually, and all the different products and that sort of thing. And like I said, Cairo's built up of a lot of different neighborhoods. This is actually in an area where people live. They call it the City of the Dead. There's a couple of these areas, very large areas where they are functioning as graveyards, as well as people that have made sort of makeshift homes inside of the buildings that used to house family, and it's a very interesting area to walk through. Here's another shot where I'm fascinated by this car and this scene, and I pass by this car every time I go there to get a shot, but just very atmospheric on the streets there.
Sure.
We saw this one last night. This is the Birkash Camel Market, and this is a place where I've gotten a few photos. I've been here several times over the last couple years, and it's a crazy place, very, very hectic. Camels running everywhere. They're hobbled, so one of their front legs is bound like this, but even with 3 legs, they can run, and so and part of the auctioning process is they'll kind of hit the camel to make it run to show its strength. These camels are at the end of a very long road. They come from various places like Sudan and things like that, and these traders come to this weekly market and auction their camels. And in this photo, they happen to be pulling up, and as they were pulling up, I'm running alongside the truck, knowing that if I can get the sun at my back and shoot a little bit less obvious, I don't want to include the whole camel. And so the really fortunate part about this shot was the fact that as I'm rounding the truck, the driver is sticking his head in, his arm in to unlock the door and to get in. And it's just, it cracks me up every time I see it, because I've seen the contact sheets, and he looks so much different when he's normal, like his normal expressions.
And so emotion can change.
Yeah, but yeah, he's just shocked because,
sure.
My shadow's on him. I'm right there on the hood, taking this photo.
And maybe because you had the sun on the back, so you were just a shadow, so you are very menacing.
Yeah, but so they're just unloading this camel to take him to the market.
Okay, it's no.
Oh.
Okay. It's just just some problem seems.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, some more daily scenes and neighborhoods that normally don't see tourists. And yeah, I like complex scenes like this. This is a mirror market, and this street is just lined with furniture and mirrors. And Cairo has a lot of these market and sort of neighborhoods where it'll be a furniture market or markets of flowers or toys, and it's just wild because there's so much. It's so messy. It's almost impossible to actually make a photograph in these places because it's so messy and disorganized.
Well, you succeeded really well here.
I think you.
Also because the position of people. So it's like a clock mechanism.
Very fortunate. This is a corner that I'd been to quite a few times, and the mirrors aren't always displayed in this way. So the fact that the man is sitting there so relaxed, and he's got just a mirror frame. It wouldn't work. Or maybe it would work, but the fact that there's a mirror reflecting a mirror frame, and there's a lot of different things going on. And so I like, as a street photographer, I like photos that maybe seem plain at first, but are either quirky or make me smile. So, this is just a photo of a baby at first, but, then you have the father looking on with adoring eyes in the back, and you've just got this strange hand just screwing the baby's head on or something.
And this one on my favorite.
Thank you. Yeah, this is one of my favorites as well. Another surreal scene, a scene that I'm walking this way, it happens behind me, and as soon as it happens, I know I only have maybe 20, 30 seconds to pull off a photo, and I don't like to take photos of people. I like to take photos of scenes. I like a more complex picture with a sort of a narrative. So my instinct is, or I think everybody's instinct is, when you're caught off guard, is you point your camera at it and you take a photo. And so I point what's going on here is the one lady has her hijab flipped over her face, and they're getting into a little bit of a fight. And so I turn and point my camera, and as soon as I do that, I'm thinking, this is so amazing, but this is too simple. Like, where is the photo, And so I'm scanning the scene. Just I'm not worrying. Not going to be satisfied with a photo of these two ladies fighting. And it's this girl, this young girl, just leaning out, and her gaze. She's just so indifferent to what is going on. She's almost bothered, like can't be bothered, and just a little annoyed, but her relaxed gaze as she's looking at these.
A scene that she sees every day.
Yeah, so it's very, very quirky and surreal. But yeah, so it's one of my favorites. And here, this is a photo that I really enjoyed seeing it large over at the exhibition. I've never actually seen my photos large before, like they are at the exhibition. So thank you so much for giving me this honor to have so many photos exhibited. Yeah, so I really liked how you can see the history in her face, and then juxtaposed with the statue.
Yeah, that's great. It was garbage, or it was there just for...
Yeah, it's common to just see stuff kind of sitting around like this. This is just a neighborhood, or maybe these are, it looks like closed shops. Like this is a...
Yeah.
But yeah, so it was just sitting out there. And this is a scene where I just love the lighting. And I'm going into the Coptic area of Cairo. This is a little tea shop right on the border of I shouldn't say Coptic Cairo, because if you've been to Coptic Cairo, or if you've been to Cairo, Coptic Cairo is actually different. This is an area where Coptic Christians live, and it's actually more referred to as Garbage City.
Mm-hmm.
So Garbage City, unfortunately, is named that because the Coptics, as was mentioned in the previous talk, is the old Christian religion that was dominant in Cairo way back in the day, and now most of the Coptics have been centralized in this neighborhood.
Yeah, a sort of ghetto.
Where they make their living by sorting through garbage and recycling what can be recycled. So when you're in Garbage City, the first floor of most buildings is full of gigantic garbage bags. There's garbage all over.
Literally garbage.
Yeah, it smells very strong, but it's a fascinating neighborhood because there's so much Coptic Christian symbology with signs, and it's also a functioning neighborhood where there's cell phone stores, there's markets and things like that, and they're making their living, and they're working hard, and so it's an area where it is difficult to photograph in, and you have to really approach it with a lot of gently.
Sure.
This is just a market. Here's some of the Coptic Christian symbolism I was referring to, and these are sort of the emotions that I like to capture, as well as capturing emotions of joy and that sort of thing.
I guess you were in a lot of situations. Do you have any favorite moments about what happened when you were photographing Cairo? Some moments, something that struck you particularly?
Yeah, I mean, I've had a lot of fun moments. Once I was in an alley where they were having a wedding reception, and so I don't have any photos. I have some video. It's a little bit embarrassing, but basically, their photo are like, well, I do have one photo. It's not in this exhibition, but it's online on my profile. But yeah, it was hilarious because I've got a photo that turned out that I like. But after I took this photo, they were really fascinated by me, and even though they're having this wedding reception, and I shouldn't be the center of attention, like they invite me in and they're dancing and clapping, and so I'm dancing and taking some iPhone video and stuff, and so that was one of my favorite moments. I really enjoy being able to connect, even if there's a complete language barrier. And then I think the other favorite moment is not a specific photo, but it was the day that I received my first message from an Egyptian who said, "I'm an Egyptian. I used to live in Cairo. I like photography. You've made me see my city in a different way, and I'm looking forward to, I would love to go back and photograph my city now. I never thought of that before."
It's a big compliment, very big.
Yeah. And so I was blown away. And then after that, I received, it started to come in from Egyptians. And that's what mattered most to me, is I wanted to be able to show a place that I was fascinated by, but also capture it in a way that the people that live there that may kind of have that attitude where, maybe we don't have much that's special, or maybe it's not so beautiful or whatever, to try to show that these situations and these scenes, no matter where we come from, we can relate to them. We can enjoy this thing that we call life that is very stressful and sometimes and gets the best of us, but there's a lot of joy if we just take a look. So that's one of my favorite moments, not actually a photo, but
it's a way to go back to the basic human being, society.
Yeah, exactly. And so here's a sort of a darker photo. This is darker in both, the light, but actually darker, much darker in feel. So the project, the timeline of the project, it's got about 100 and something photos. You see a lot of things repeat, and the feel gets the idea is to explore and deeper and to give more complicated, maybe challenging emotionally. Like I'm not sure if I'm comfortable with this photo. I don't want every photo to be just beautiful sunshine and things like that. But yeah, this was a very unique moment, very surreal. And above all, like moments like this that to me sort of inspire hope and, and also show hard work and things like that. On the left, there's a sliver of a mirror where you can see the guy hammering and then this other guy picking up, and just, I'm fascinated by the colors that are on these walls that show the history of the last 100 years.
Was it morning?
I have no idea what time this one actually was.
Because this seems natural light.
Yeah. From up above.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, that's it.
Yeah. Okay, John. Just some other questions I have. Okay. Okay. So you document Cairo. You're documenting Japan. So have you got any intention to go to some other countries or go back in Japan? So.
Yeah. This last year, I spent about 6 months in the Indian subcontinent. I started off the year with 3 months in Sri Lanka during the economic turmoil and protests that were going on in Sri Lanka. And then moved up to Mumbai and Varanasi and Nepal. So I've been to India quite a few times, as well as doing photography in Mexico. And of course, Japan. So right now, I would say Mexico, Japan, and India are the places that I'm looking forward to.
Very different world. So
yeah,
how do you find yourself in going from a completely world to another?
Right. At first, I guess it was more challenging than it is now. Now I've spent so much time in each one of these places that it isn't that difficult of a transition. But when I do go to a new country or city, it is a little bit difficult. But I tend to approach every place the same, where I don't really have any expectations. I don't have much of a plan. I just go out and I walk a ton, usually 10 to 20,000 steps a day. I just head out in the morning and walk until the evening and shoot and see what happens.
And in Japan, which kind of work are you doing?
So in Japan, I live in Kyoto, which is the capital of Japan prior to Tokyo. And Kyoto is a very beautiful historic city, but it's got a very interesting area called Gion, which is divided between the geisha district of Kyoto and then the old red light district. So it's just an interesting juxtaposition of cultures.
Yeah.
And Japan is just a fascinating place. But so I've been in Kyoto Japan for like 12 years off and on. I've been there 20 times, I think, and focusing on Kyoto for the last maybe 6 or 7.
Yeah. So, one last question for me that we ask to the audience. And you are a young photographer, and you seem to be pretty young. But reading your biography, you're very active. So I just was wondering if you have any advice for new photographers, for photographers who want to make photography a living, any kind of advice.
Yeah, absolutely. So the advice that I would give is to absorb as much good photography as you can. Go to galleries and learn from the masters.
Yeah.
And learn from others. Expose yourself to workshops, things like that. Other photographers in your genre, and don't really worry about what is the trends on the social media.
Sure.
As well as realize that for everybody, at least everybody I know that does street photography, it's a process where you can easily go weeks, months without anything decent, and you're out there every day taking photos. So the instant gratification of Instagram, again, is something that I think demotivates new photographers.
Yeah.
And as far as learning, if you're interested in my approach and how I take these type of photos, I actually did about an hour talk in depth with B&H Photo that's online. So you can type in my name, type B&H Photo, and you'll see sort of the contact sheets with these photos and see how I go from being the center of attention to invisible, and how I put the photos together in my mind.
Yeah. And I was lying. I have another further question, which was nonetheless, have you ever been tempted to pass from street photography to reportage, going so much places, seeing so much things?
Right. Yeah, I have been, and I have attempted, but I've never really done a long-term documentary photo project. And with the type of travel that I do, and with it for the last 2 years at least, it was very unpredictable, because it was basically, other than being in Cairo, I would go to whatever place was open and seemed to be a good place to photograph.
Yeah.
So I don't really have too much time to do too much research,
Yeah.
but I would like to do that and try that
in the future, maybe.
Yeah.
I find you perfectly balanced in what you do, so that's a very good thing. So, non so se ci sono domande al pubblico. Any question from the audience? Perfect.
Yeah, I don't. And so that's kind of a common question. And also, like, the question of, do you ask before you take a photo, is also kind of common. So on a typical day in Cairo, I don't feel that I shoot very many photographs. I shoot pretty slowly and deliberately. I shoot with my camera to my eye, always like this. And I don't have continuous shooting. I just, shoot. So, but Cairo is a place where fascinating scenes are happening all over the place pretty often. And so at the end of the day, I'll have 500 shots to look through. And that's waking up at 7 a.m. and working all the way through the evening. So just logistically, I enjoy talking to people if they do notice that I'm taking their photo, and I like showing them, especially the kids and stuff, and anybody. I enjoy showing them the photo, and that'll often make them more comfortable, and so I can go back to taking photos, and people will be ignoring me again. But yeah, if people ask for money, which happens very rarely. I'm trying to think of examples, but yeah, it just doesn't happen. But if I do revisit a place and I've got a print that I think somebody would like, so the other thing about, when I come home with 400 photos, maybe one of them is going to be okay. And so most of them just never see the light of day. But I do enjoy, if I can, going back to somebody and hopefully making their day with a photo. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Ci sono altre domande? Any other questions?